Hidden deep in the rugged Caucasus Mountains of southern Russia lies a mystery that defies explanation. Locals call it Carahora, a vertical shaft cut straight into the heart of a mountain. Some say it's a natural wonder, others whisper it's the last trace of a lost civilization. But one thing is certain, Carahora terrifies scientists. Inside its depths, explorers have reported smooth, polished walls, stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, and a vast underground hall that looks nothing like a natural cave. No tools, no artifacts, no signs of life. Just a geometry so precise it feels impossible. If Carahora is man-made, it rewrites human history, proving that advanced engineering existed long before Egypt or Mesopotamia. If it's natural, it reveals a geological process unknown to science, one that breaks every model we have of how rock forms. Either way, Carahora is a riddle carved in stone, and those who've tried to uncover its secrets have often met with tragedy. This is the story of the Russian prehistoric underground megastructure, and why it remains one of the most unsettling mysteries of our time. Mountains of Mystery. In the far south of Russia, deep within the towering Caucasus Mountains, lies a land defined as much by its beauty as by its danger. This is Kabardino-Balkaria, a small republic home to some of the tallest peaks in Europe. Mount Elbrus rises more than 18,000 feet above sea level, capped with snow all year, standing like a white pillar against the endless sky. The region is carved with steep valleys, sheer cliffs, and dark forests. A place so wild and unforgiving that for centuries people could only cling to the mountainsides and scattered villages. Travelers throughout history wrote about the Caucasus with awe and caution. They described not only the harsh landscape, but also the resilience of the people who live there. Tough, unyielding, shaped by their environment. Yet beyond the physical hardships of the land, something else has always haunted Kabardino-Balkaria. Stories that refuse to die. For generations, local people have spoken of hidden tunnels and underground cities, built in forgotten times to shelter entire communities from invaders. They tell of stone corridors too straight and too smooth to be natural, as if carved by hands wielding tools beyond their age. These tales were whispered around fires, passed down through families, eventually written into folklore collections. To many, they were nothing but legends, but to a few, they seemed like fragments of a lost map, hints of something very real. During the Soviet era, geological surveys swept across the Caucasus in search of oil and minerals. Scientists charted ridges, drilled cores, and filled maps with data. Yet even then, large gray gaps remained, areas too remote, too rugged, or too mysterious to fully document. And it was within those gaps that the old stories about gateways into the mountain still lived on. One man in particular decided to take those stories seriously, Arur Yamukov. Born in the mountains, he grew up fascinated by the world beneath the earth. By the 2000s, he had become one of Russia's most persistent cave explorers. Unlike many researchers, Yamukov believed folklore contained kernels of truth, fragments eroded by time, but still pointing toward real discoveries when combined with science. By the late 2000s, he began to gather clues. Locals spoke of a strange vertical opening on Mount Kahora, high in the peaks of Kabardino-Balkaria. Old World War II records suggested German soldiers had also shown unusual interest in the same area during their 1942 campaign in the Caucasus. Why? What had they been looking for? To Yamukov, the pieces fit together like an invitation. He wasn't searching for just another cave. He wanted to test a larger idea. Could there truly be an artificial structure buried inside these mountains? With ropes, climbing gear, and a small team of companions, he set out, not guided by modern maps, but by old war notes and local memory. And in 2011, they found it. On the rocky slope of Mount Carahora, Hidden by brush and erosion was a narrow vertical shaft. It wasn't wide, but it was eerily straight-edged, unlike any natural cave entrance Yemakov had seen before. It looked as if some colossal blade had sliced downward through the mountain, leaving behind a perfect cut into the darkness. In that moment, the legends no longer felt distant. They were standing at the threshold of something real. Yemakov knew the next step wasn't just another descent into a cave. It was a step into a story that had never been finished. Descent into the unknown. Standing before the fissure on Mount Carahora in 2011, Arur Yemakov realized he was standing at the edge between legend and reality. The opening was too narrow to be a natural valley, too straight to be a random crack. It looked like a vertical shaft deliberately cut into the mountain. And he knew the only way to find the truth was to go down. The first step, the team prepared ropes, anchors, and headlamps. No one knew how deep it was. A quick stone drop test suggested a depth of about 130 feet, roughly a 12-story building. For veteran explorers, that depth wasn't unprecedented, but the shape made it terrifying. A sheer vertical chute, almost polished smooth, with no ledges, no footholds. One slip, one rope failure, and the fall would be fatal. The first beam of light across the shaft walls revealed something startling. Flat, parallel planes of stone. There were no jagged edges, no curves, none of the rough surfaces expected in natural caves. Instead, the walls reflected light in long, even strips. To Yemakov, this was confirmation that the shaft was nothing like any natural formation he had ever studied. The descent, one by one, they lowered themselves into the darkness. Every inch was hard-won. The rope creaked, shoulders scraped against the cold, unnervingly smooth stone. The deeper they went, the heavier the air felt. Silence pressed in, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. In that silence, an unsettling thought lingered. If this shaft was truly artificial, who had cut into the mountain, and why? After more than an hour of slow descent, the shaft abruptly opened, and the team's light swept into a space so massive it left them speechless. The underground hall. They stood at the edge of a vast chamber, nearly 120 feet high, taller than a 10-story building. The ceiling disappeared into darkness. The walls around them were built not of random stone, but of enormous rectangular blocks, their edges straight, their joints impossibly tight. Some blocks were estimated to weigh over 200 tons. In the beam of their lamps, the blocks stretched upward in clean, even lines. In places, stone pillars seemed to rise like columns, as if supporting the unseen roof. Narrow side passages branched away from the hall, but they were too tight for anyone to pass through. Yet even these side tunnels carried the same signature geometry: smooth surfaces, sharp right angles, deliberate design. This was no ordinary cave. Yemakov knew instantly. Everything about this chamber suggested intentional construction, the weight of silence. But wonder quickly gave way to dread. The chamber was vast, but it was also completely sealed off. No natural light, no airflow, only one vertical exit. A single accident could turn the hall into a tomb. They searched what they could, but the space was empty. No pottery, no tools, no soot from torches. If this had been built by humans, it wasn't for living, for burial, or for mining. Its purpose was something else entirely, something lost. That emptiness was more unsettling than any artifact. A structure without function, a hall without a story, was like a message stripped of words, leaving only its geometry as a clue, a familiar comparison. Some in the team couldn't help but compare it to the Great Pyramid of Giza. The precision of the blocks, the vertical shaft, the vast interior space. It all echoed Egypt's most famous monument, Could Carahora have been some kind of buried pyramid, hidden in the Caucasus instead of the desert? If so, it would push the timeline of advanced architecture thousands of years earlier than we currently believe. Even as a speculation, the thought was staggering. The climb back hours later, the team began the climb back up. If descending had been exhausting, the return was grueling. The vertical shaft gave them no margin for error. Every meter was a battle of rope, muscle, and fear. Only when they finally pulled themselves into daylight did they exhale in relief. But Yemakov knew they had crossed a threshold. What they saw below Carahora was not just another cave. It was the beginning of a story without an ending. News of the discovery spread quickly. To some, it was evidence of a forgotten civilization. To others, it was simply an extreme example of unusual geology. But for those who had stood inside that chamber, the impression remained. It was too perfect to be natural. And with that, Carahora moved from discovery to debate, from a hidden shaft to one of the most perplexing mysteries of the modern era. Terrifies, theories, myths, and dark history. When word of Carahora spread beyond local explorers, it quickly captured global imagination. What Yemakov and his team had seen underground did not look like a cave. It looked like a buried structure, and from that moment, Carahora became the center of a storm of theories, myths, and unsettling history. Echoes of the Great Pyramid. The first comparisons were inevitable. The smooth walls of Carahora's underground hall, its sharp angles, and massive stone blocks seemed uncannily similar to the Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. Some of Carahora's blocks were estimated to weigh more than 200 tons, rivaling or exceeding anything in Egypt. This raised unsettling questions. Could the same level of precision engineering that shaped Egypt's pyramids have also existed in the Caucasus? If so, this wasn't just a geological oddity, it was a gap in humanity's timeline. It suggested that advanced building techniques might have appeared, vanished, and reappeared across different parts of the world, far earlier than recorded history admits. What was it for? Speculation about Carahora's purpose multiplied. Some believed it was a ventilation shaft, part of a larger underground complex now collapsed or sealed. Others suggested it was an acoustic resonator, designed to channel energy in ways we don't yet understand. Bolder theories imagined Carahora as the foundation of a pyramid that once stood above ground, long since buried. Still others went further, proposing it was some kind of prehistoric machine, a generator tapping into natural forces of the earth. What made these theories thrive was not the evidence, but the absence of answers. A chamber that large, that precise with no artifacts of daily life, no pottery, no torches, no tools, was not easily explained. The shadow of World War II. But Carahora's mystery is not only ancient, it is also tangled with the darkest chapter of modern history, World War II. In 1942, during Operation Edelweiss, Nazi forces surged into the Caucasus to capture oil fields. Officially, the campaign was about fuel. Unofficially, some researchers argue the Nazis had other motives. Under Heinrich Himmler, the SS created the Ahnenerbe, an institute obsessed with tracing the mythical, ancestral heritage of the Aryan race. In practice, it sent expeditions worldwide in search of lost knowledge, from Tibet to the Middle East, often chasing legends of Shambhala, a hidden underground city said to hold advanced wisdom and power. Rumors persist that German soldiers carved swastikas into rocks near Mount Kahora. Were they mere territorial markings, or signs that the Nazis, too, believed this mountain concealed something extraordinary? If true, then Yemakov, in 2011, was not the first to be drawn to Carahora's secrets. The Nazis may have stood at the same threshold decades earlier. Symbols older than the Nazis. The swastika complicates the story further. Long before its appropriation by Hitler, the symbol appeared across Central Asia, India, and the Caucasus itself, representing cosmic order, eternity, and power. If swastikas truly existed on stones near Carahora, were they remnants of Nazi soldiers or echoes of something far more ancient? The overlap of myth, archaeology, and wartime history makes it difficult to separate coincidence from significance, tragedy and rumor. The modern story of Carahora grew darker still. In 2015, Arur Gemukov died unexpectedly. In 2017, Vadim Chernobrov, head of the research group Cosmopoisk and one of Karahora's strongest advocates, also passed away suddenly. Other climbers linked to expeditions in the region suffered accidents or illnesses. Skeptics point to the obvious. The Caucasus is dangerous, accidents happen, and human mortality needs no supernatural explanation. But for those already inclined to believe in Karahora's power, the pattern of deaths fed the idea of a curse, a hidden danger protecting the mountain's secrets. Modern sparks of debate. Then came 2017 and 2018, when photographer Alexander Splashnov released albums of Karahora's landscape. The photos showed sharp-edged blocks, smooth stone plains, even markings that looked like tool traces. Online forums lit up with analysis. Was this evidence of a prehistoric quarry, a megalithic wall, or just natural rock weathering? The debate raged, but one thing was clear. Carahora had moved beyond local legend. It was now a global mystery, debated in YouTube videos, podcasts, and blogs. And yet, through all of this, no official studies were published, no geological surveys, no archaeological reports, nothing peer-reviewed. Carahora remained in a strange limbo. Not quite science, not quite myth, but something in between. A knot of past and present. In the end, Carahora became a knot where many threads converged. Ancient legends of underground cities, Nazi obsessions with lost civilizations, modern explorers meeting tragedy, photographs too sharp to ignore, but too uncertain to confirm. Together, they wove Carahora into something larger than a cave, a place where folklore, history, and speculation collide, leaving us with more questions than answers. Tragedy and modern evidence. Exploring Carahora has never been safe. But what turned this hidden shaft from a geological puzzle into a legend wrapped in tragedy was not just the danger of the descent. It was what happened to the people connected with it. The death of Arur Gemukov. The man who first ascended into Carahora, Arur Gemukov, never had the chance to continue his work. In 2015, he died unexpectedly, a shock to friends and colleagues alike. For Russia's speleology community, his loss was devastating. Gemukov wasn't just another explorer. He was the only person who had personally stood inside the underground hall and described its walls of impossibly smooth stone. With his passing, much of the momentum surrounding Carahora stalled. The detailed notes, sketches, and first-hand impressions of the site vanished with him. What remained were fragments, whispers of a discovery too strange to ignore, but now impossible to verify. The fall of Vadim Chernobrov. 2 years later, in 2017, tragedy struck again. Vadim Chernobrov, founder of the Russian research group Cosmopoisk, also died suddenly. Chernobrov had investigated Carahora, collected stories, and helped bring the mystery to wider attention. His death so soon after Gemukov's only fueled speculation. To skeptics, it was coincidence. Two men, both middle-aged, both working in dangerous conditions. But to believers, it looked like something darker. Evidence that Carahora was cursed, punishing those who tried to uncover its secrets. Other strange losses reports emerged of other climbers and researchers who had accidents or fell ill after expeditions in the Caucasus. No direct connection was ever proven, but the pattern added to Karahora's sinister reputation. Whether coincidence or curse, the site was no longer seen as merely a cave. It had become a place of danger, even death. The photographs of Splashnov. Then in 2017 and 2018, a new kind of evidence emerged. Russian photographer and digital artist Alexander Splashnov published online albums of the Carahora region. His photos sparked a storm. They showed blocks with sharp angles, flat faces, and seams so tight they looked engineered. Some stones bore markings that resembled tool cuts. Others looked like step formations, as if carved or quarried. For many, these images were the strongest proof yet that Carahora wasn't natural at all, but the remains of an ancient megalithic construction. Online communities dissected every photo, zooming in on seams, analyzing corners, debating the scale. a battle of interpretations. The photos divided opinion. Enthusiasts declared them undeniable evidence of prehistoric builders. Skeptics argued the shapes could be explained by natural geological processes, like columnar basalt or frost fracturing. But one fact overshadowed the debate. There were no official studies, no peer-reviewed geology, no archaeological surveys, no government-backed expeditions. Carahora existed only in a strange half-light, documented by explorers and photographers, but ignored by academia. The silence of science. This silence was perhaps the most unsettling detail of all. Around the world, mysterious sites like the pyramids of Giza or Machu Picchu are intensely studied, mapped, and debated in professional journals. But Carahora, nothing. That vacuum left the field open to speculation. Internet forums and YouTube channels filled the gap, spinning theories, building myths, and keeping the mystery alive. For some, the lack of official interest was itself suspicious. Were governments avoiding Carahora because the truth was too disruptive? Or was it simply too remote, too costly, and too dangerous to investigate? From discovery to legend. Whatever the reason, Carahora slipped further away from science and deeper into folklore. It became less a cave and more a modern myth, a place whispered about in forums, debated in videos, shared in photo analyses. It was no longer just a physical location. It had become a mirror for human imagination and fear, a stage where tragedy, rumor, and speculation all play their parts. And with every unanswered question, Carahora's legend only grew stronger. For it terrifies scientists. Carahora isn't terrifying just because it's dangerous to explore, or because of the tragedies linked to it. What makes it truly unsettling is that it defies explanation. Whether you believe it to be man-made or natural, both possibilities lead to consequences that shake the very foundations of science. If Carahora is man-made, let's begin with the unthinkable, that Carahora is artificial. Some of its blocks are estimated at over 200 tons. The walls are smooth, the seams impossibly tight, achieved with a precision that rivals modern engineering. To cut, move, and assemble stone on that scale requires technology far beyond what we believe existed in prehistoric times. If that's true, then our history books are wrong. It would mean that an advanced civilization existed in the Caucasus thousands of years before Mesopotamia, before Egypt, long before the so-called cradle of civilization. But here's the problem. There are no supporting artifacts, no pottery, no tools, no remnants of daily life. Nothing that tells us who these builders were or why they carved into the mountain. That silence makes it even more unnerving. Because if Carahora was built by humans, it wasn't a home, a tomb, or a mine. It was something else. Something we don't yet have the words for. For archaeology, this would be catastrophic. It would force us to rewrite the entire timeline of human civilization. If Carahora is natural, at first glance, this option might sound safer, but it's just as frightening. We know how caves form. Through water erosion, volcanic tubes, tectonic fractures. All of them create irregular shapes, curved walls, jagged edges, uneven surfaces. Carahora doesn't fit. Its walls are flat, its surfaces are smooth, its stones appear aligned, fitted, and geometric. Even rare natural formations like basalt columns, while geometric, don't look like polished blocks stacked with precision. If Carahora is natural, then it represents a geological process completely unknown to science. That would mean our models of how rock forms and fractures are incomplete. It would mean that we don't fully understand our own planet. For geology, this would be a paradigm shift, the terrifying dilemma. That's why Carahora is so unsettling. If it's artificial, it destroys our current history of civilization. If it's natural, it destroys our current understanding of geology. There's no safe middle ground. Either outcome opens a hole in human knowledge, and in science, those holes are deeply uncomfortable. The silence of academia. Perhaps this explains why no official studies have followed. No universities have published peer-reviewed papers. No government has funded a survey. For some, that silence is evidence of a cover-up. For others, it's simply practicality. Carahora is remote, risky, and expensive to study, but the result is the same, a vacuum where speculation thrives. And that vacuum is precisely what makes Carahora so powerful. It's not just a place, it's a question, a mirror of fear. Ultimately, Carahora is less about what it is and more about what it represents. The fear that we might have missed an entire chapter of human civilization. The fear that we don't truly understand Earth's processes. The fear that some places remain hidden because we are not meant to uncover them. Carahora is not just a shaft in a mountain. It is a mirror held up to humanity's uncertainty. Standing at the edge of the unknown, that's why scientists call it terrifying. Because no matter what Carahora is, the answer will rewrite something fundamental. And until someone dares to return, map it, and publish the truth, it will remain what it is today. A riddle in stone, buried in the Caucasus, daring us to look deeper, while warning us that some knowledge comes at a price. The legacy of mystery. To this day, Carahora remains an unresolved enigma. More than a decade after Jemakhov's first descent, no new scientific data has surfaced. No detailed maps, no peer-reviewed studies, no official archaeological surveys. What we are left with is a mosaic of fragments, a few haunting photographs, tragic deaths, and the echoes of ancient legends about underground cities carved in forgotten ages. When science falls silent, myth takes over. Carahora exists in a strange vacuum. It is widely known yet never formally studied, and in that silence, imagination rushes in. For some, it is proof of a lost civilization. For others, it is evidence of geological processes we don't yet understand. For believers in the mystical, it is a place of curses, symbols, and hidden power. These narratives don't cancel each other out. Instead, they layer on top of one another, building Carahora's legend into something larger than the shaft itself. A symbol of curiosity. Throughout history, unexplained monuments have fascinated humanity. The pyramids of Giza, the Moai of Easter Island, the megalithic walls of Sacsayhuaman, all provoke the same questions. Who built them? How? And why? Carahora belongs in that category, but with a unique twist. It has never been fully studied. No official narrative exists. That absence of explanation makes it even more compelling. It allows everyone to project their own answers, turning the site into a canvas for imagination. Darkness is a mirror, but Carahora is more than mystery. It is a mirror. It reflects our fear that we are not the first advanced humans to walk this earth. It reflects our fear that our scientific models are incomplete, that we don't truly understand our own planet. And it reflects our fear that curiosity itself can be dangerous, that some doors might be better left unopened. In the silent blackness of its underground hall, Carahora forces us to confront not just stone, but our own uncertainty. Why the story remains unfinished. The most haunting question is this: why has no one returned? Is it too dangerous? Too costly? Or is there a deeper reason, an unspoken decision, that humanity isn't ready for what Carahora might reveal? Because if it is man-made, history collapses. If it is natural, geology shatters. Either answer threatens to overturn the ground beneath our understanding. Sometimes silence is the safest response. The enduring legacy. Today, Carahora lives not in textbooks or museum exhibits, but in photos shared online, YouTube debates, and late-night discussions on forums. It has become a modern myth, a reminder that the world still holds mysteries big enough to humble us. Its legacy isn't a solved puzzle, but an open wound in our knowledge, a reminder that wonder still exists and that the unknown still matters. Final reflection. Carahora might be natural, it might be artificial, it might be both, or neither. What matters is that it forces us to admit the limits of our knowledge. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Carahora is less about what lies inside the mountain and more about what it awakens in us. Curiosity, humility, and the drive to keep searching. In the end, Carahora is more than a shaft. It is a story without an ending, a mirror of human imagination and fear. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful mysteries are not the ones we solve, but the ones that refuse to be solved.